people will easily assume that it's a phase.
Yes.
Especially if you're a woman.
They think I'll end back up with a man, or my dating females is just a phase.
You're the one that's like, you better come out by the end of this. You better.
I think we forget how much people want certainty in this life. That's why they don't like the ambiguity of people saying that they're bi.
Have I been too scared to acknowledge that I have been bisexual all these years due to like internalized biphobia, or is it like a fear of other people's biphobia?
Hi, I'm Pip Rasmussen, and I got a haircut this week at the barber, and let me tell you, it changed my mind about the hair snip experience.
What do you mean? The barber, like a dry cut?
A dry cut, a man, no small talk, in and out 5 minutes, so good.
How did they react when you walked in? Were they like, yep, we can do it?
They were empty, and I was like, you need my business.
Oh my God.
They literally were like, yeah, no worries. But anyway, it's really like opened up my world. So if you have long hair, then go and test it out. Unless you have like a really complicated like long hair cut, like I don't know.
Absolutely.
But they all learn to do the same thing.
Exactly. And sometimes you just need like, especially if you've got like bangs or something like that, you just need like a little trim.
Yeah.
I'm Jordan Barr. I'm here filling in for D. Salmon. And I believe that all grandmas are lesbians.
Please explain. Because is it and they were roommates kind of thing? They weren't actually roommates.
They weren't roommates. I think that, and I would argue maybe some grandmothers used to be straight. I think that there is a turn that happens. There's something about the way that they approach the world, their care for one another and for other women.
Yeah.
And I just think, I think we need to embrace the fact that they are stepping into a new chapter in their life, and they are all lesbians. What do they enjoy doing? Gardening, crocheting, watching daytime TV.
Yes.
That's gay,
That's
you know?
gay.
And I think they care about like childcare, they read books. That's gay. Reading is gay.
You heard it first, folks.
Sorry
Jordan,
to say.
you are the authority on gay, actually, which is why we got you here today.
If we are in that, we really are in dire straits. This is the end of times. If I am in charge of what's gay, then we're in trouble. We are in trouble, because I would say that as a queer woman, most of my interests and hobbies align more with a stereotypical queer male. I am a 60-year-old bitter gay man trapped in a woman's body. I don't represent lesbians very well.
Okay, no, you are the perfect person for this episode. Don't doubt
Thank
yourself.
you.
This is why we got you here. And yeah, if you remember Jordan, she was actually on an episode a couple of months ago about floodlighting. So Jordan and I worked together at Triple J. If you were an international listener, that's kind of like where we come from. It's a big radio station, but it's a youth broadcaster.
The National Youth Broadcaster.
That's right. And you'll be broadcasting on a weekend on breakfast. You also podcast as well. You're a stand-up comedian. And we're so happy to have you here today. So thank you for coming.
God. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't often get to hang out in purple lighting with a cactus. So this is where I was born to be.
What we're doing in this episode is talking about a very unique experience, what we think is to women or female identifying people. If you are queer, there's this kind of assumption that society at large has that they will generally end back up with a man in their dating life. And there's been like a lot of talk online. There's been a couple of incidents in the last, I would say 6 to 12 months of very high profile queer women sort of saying things like, I'm holding space for that person to just like end up with a man and like whatever. And it's like kind of brought on a really interesting discourse about biphobia, about lesphobia, and we kind of wanted to like explore that with you. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at like your experiences of that, whether people assume that you're always going to end up back with a man, where maybe that is coming from and why. So let's get into it. All right. So Jordan, I know that you know this clip because you said to me that you were like, this was all over my feed, right?
It was.
So this was a clip that was kind of going viral and people had a lot of issues with this Australian artist, musician, Betty Who, and who went on a podcast and said some stuff. And this is kind of what we're contextualizing this conversation with a little bit. So this is it.
A huge part of queerness is like identifying yourself and putting yourself under like alphabet mafia. It's like, which one are you? And if you change that, I will never forget it,
Right.
So I think that as much as, like, it's funny that Renee Rapp is like, you'll never catch me dating a man. It's like, go off, queen. Like, I love that for you.
Right.
But I also hold space for her in 10 years if she goes, oops, I met the love of my life and it's this man. I didn't mean to. It's
Right.
like, that's okay. It shouldn't be illegal for you to fall in love. It's kind of like, now we've come so far that our community is so strong that now it's like a crime to be straight.
Yeah. So initial thoughts on that, obviously, like you saw that in your feed, you saw comments.
Yes.
What were people saying?
Well, there were a lot of comments being like, I think the moment that really stood out was Betty Who saying it's like illegal to be straight, also saying the alphabet mafia. And there was like that in the clip, there's that move where she has her like fist up and she's like, if you dare to change your identity.
Yeah.
And I was like,
We'll never forget it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my experience in the queer community has been like, if anything, we're more accepting of change. You know what I mean? Like there is this kind of understanding of fluidity and just like as you grow, you change. I've seen people change their pronouns back and forth. That makes it sound like it was frivolous, but it's like a legitimate thing that people go through because you are discovering yourself. And also you have this challenge, which I'm sure we'll get into this episode of needing to like find out what suits you the best, but you're constantly fighting as well what is something that you want to be or are attracted to versus what like society is telling you to be attracted to.
That's what we're kind of going to explore in terms of like the fluidity in this and the sort of the policing of those like labels and stuff like that and where that's coming from and if this is actually just a thing that we're seeing online or is it actually happening in real life as well. So there's so much that she said there that we're going to unpack, but I think what is like a good place to start is to acknowledge that is obviously an extremely like highly publicized thing. They're an artist, they're a celebrity, so people hold them I think to like a slightly different standard, but I do think that there are some things that have like a bit of a trickle down effect, and we on our Instagram at Triple J the Hookup asked you about where you were sitting in terms of like fluidity and sort of like changing your mind on sexuality and like whether or not that you had any pushback or challenge from that. And so we got a bunch of different answers and I wanted to kind of start off with this voice memo from Rach.
I've just started dating this incredible human and honestly, I am completely obsessed with her. But at the same time, I'm carrying around this low-level anxiety about how people are going to react. For most of my adult life, I've presented as very straight. I'm in my early 30s now, and while I've always been curious about women, I've never really explored it. My dating history has been almost exclusively men. So for me to suddenly show up all in dating a woman, I can feel the biphobia and the weird vibes brewing in the background. I think the best way I can describe this is a really weird mix of joy and terror. So happy to be where I am with who I'm with, and yet I feel like I'm bracing for impact every time I think about stepping up publicly with this person.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was the same. I only ever like dated men or slept with men for a long time, but like amongst my friends and stuff, I was really open about how I was definitely interested in people who weren't men. And I just I never came out to my family or anything.
Oh, really?
I just didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I think in my mind I was like, well, if I'm dating someone, I would introduce them. It's the same as like I didn't introduce them to any of the guys that I was like casually seeing because it wasn't important. It didn't.
You didn't need to. Yeah.
And then I eventually introduced them to my partner Kayla, and it was chill with my immediate family and stuff. But you definitely do have that like, and I still have it. Like we've been together for like 7 years. I really empathize with Rachel's anxiety of like, you never know how someone's going to react, and it is really strange how it comes up, and it surprise yourself sometimes because you're like, I thought I was really comfortable, I thought I was really like happy in my own skin, and I am, but then these little situations pop up where you realize that you're like, oh, I don't know how people are going to respond. And interesting for Rach with the sort of like biphobia of it all, people will easily assume that it's a phase.
Yes.
Especially if you're a woman. And I find it really interesting because if a guy I know has, you know, if a guy's experimented with men once in his life, everyone will be like, well, he's secretly gay.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They will always assume that it's gay. People are so much more willing to accept that men or like they'll jump to conclusions for men, and then it's kind of the opposite for women, which is so, I find it so interesting. And I think it is linked to just sort of centering men and be like, it makes sense that you would be obsessed with men.
Yeah. I feel like you've absolutely hit the nail on the head with that. And that's like exactly what we're going to explore in this episode. And we have so many incredible voice memos and DMs to do that. But we also did a poll on this, asking people about their experiences. If you are female identifying and are bisexual or lesbian, has anyone dismissed or challenged your sexuality? 81% of you said yes. That's a pretty whopping big number. So this is what we're going to unpack here, because a lot of you said that you did feel invisible or dismissed. So Bree said, I'm bi, dating a cis man. I think my interest in women is ignored. Everyone thinks I'm straight. Aisling said, I'm a bi woman dating an AFAB person. AFAB is assigned female at birth, if you didn't know. But so many of my bi friends with boyfriends are erased. We also got this voice memo from Beck.
I'm bi and my last partner was a female, and she would regularly make comments about my sexuality, would say that I would just eventually go back to men anyway. And I know a lot of gays in very similar positions where it's like if someone's come out later in life, perhaps their partner just regularly makes jokes about, are they sure that this isn't a phase? So I know it's not an isolated incident.
I mean, Beck, I don't know about those friends making those jokes. If you've been like dating for a long time and someone's like, don't worry, you'll end up with a man, haha, joking.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Well, it'd be infuriating for someone to invalidate your relationship full stop. And it is so interesting because I don't think straight people will get this, you know, like if anything, they're like, this guy has bad news, but they don't deny that someone's attracted to them or invested in them. Whereas like, I do think this is a unique experience, and that sucks for Beck. And also having partners question your sexuality as well, or your attraction to them. And it is just like, you can only really take people on face value as well. If someone tells you they're attracted to you, then just take that on. I can understand for some lesbians who've potentially been in queer relationships where the other person ends up going or ending up with a man long term after them, or they break up and they end up with a man and then they have kids and sort of a nuclear family life. And that can be quite like traumatic for some people, because it is just like, you can feel just like a phase. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, like I was going to say, we are going to get into two of those points that you said, sort of like validating that feeling of like being afraid as a lesbian to feel like you are just somebody's phase and experiment. So if you are listening and that's something that you're like, I actually really resonate with that and I struggle with that, we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well.
True.
But yeah, for these people who are maybe just starting out early in their sexuality journey, maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, no, I'm bi. Like I've been bi my whole life. This is something that I know. You know, a lot of you said I've still been told, like, no matter what, how many women I date, it's still people thinking that it's going to be a phase. So Eliza said that she definitely relates to this. I feel like my sexuality is really fluid, but I try and hide it because I don't want people thinking it's a phase.
Yeah.
Bree as well said, I've heard rhetoric about not truly being bi unless you romantically date both sexes, which I find kind of interesting as well, because I guess maybe it lends to that whole trope of like, oh yeah, you're just like this like sexual fantasy that I'm filling out in my head. It was interesting because we did get this voice memo from Katie, which I'd love you to hear. She was saying that her bisexuality was actually really questioned by the lesbians in her life.
It's been interesting dating both men and women, and being ridiculed by both of them in certain ways. One of my close friends as well, who's gay, was like, no, you're not bi, you're gay, and you just haven't kind of figured it out yet. We all kind of say we're bi on our way, on our gay journey, and we just end up dating only women, and you'll see that you're gay too. And it's just extremely invalidating. And yeah, it really has made me doubt myself.
What do you think of that?
I find it so interesting because, like, personally, and I'm like curious to see how you feel about this, Pip, but like bisexuality, pansexuality is sort of makes the most sense to me. Like, if someone's bi, like in terms of the spectrum of sexualities, I feel like most of the popularity is going to be somewhere in between the extremities.
Yeah.
Like, and so it makes more sense to me that people are a little bit more fluid with who they're interested in, who they're attracted to and stuff like that. It's almost like I would say it's more unique for someone to be like, no, I know I'm only attracted to this kind of person and this kind of person and blah, blah, blah. So I find it so fascinating when people are so stringent about that stuff. And it is that policing of people's sexuality and things that I think is so wrong, because I'm also like, guys, we're supposed to be, especially the joy of being in the queer community is living outside of those restrictions. And I think, like, obviously some people are being playful and stuff like that. And we, like, the fun thing as well is ripping into one another. It's a part of what we do.
Yeah. Good old roast.
For better or worse. But I find it disheartening to hear that people are denying people's sexuality, especially because literally it doesn't make sense to me. Like the bisexuality or fluid sexuality, I mean, it just, if I'm looking at a population size, I'm like, yeah, it makes more sense that more people are kind of bi.
No, I do tend to agree. And I wanted to include this because it was sort of a different point of view from where we were first coming from, in terms of like a lot of the people messaging us on the Instagram were like, yeah, everyone always thinks I'm going to go revert back to some default NPC man lover, like whatever. But obviously Katie's experience was like the gay and lesbians in my life were just like, oh no, what was the thing that you said? Like bi on the way or something?
Yeah, oh yes, bi now, gay later.
Bi now, gay later. Like that's definitely something, and I wanted to sort of like make sure we include that.
Yeah.
But I will say though, like the majority of the responses to this were people who were talking about that assumption that you're always going to end up with a guy. And we got this voice memo from Caroline.
My sexuality has been dismissed quite a lot. I was married to a man for quite a significant amount of time. And so coming out as a bisexual woman, which I only came out as after my marriage ended, has been quite interesting, because I've had a lot of friends and a lot of family always say that they think I'll end back up with a man, or my dating females is just a phase. So I've had that happen ever since I came out. And it does kind of make you question, like, oh, am I, are they right? And then, like, I feel like they're kind of gaslighting you a little bit. Yeah, it doesn't really bother me now, but it is kind of frustrating still getting those comments, even though I've been dating females for a few years, and sometimes my friends will just joke, oh, I still think you're going to end up with a man.
So many DMs backing this though.
Yeah.
Like Leah saying, I feel like I'm not queer enough for the community because I've dated a man. Sophie saying, I feel like I can't truly come out as bi until I've dated a woman. I always feel like my attraction to men negates my bisexuality and attraction to women somehow.
I think we forget how much people want certainty in this life. That's why they don't like the ambiguity of people saying that they're bi, even though I don't think it's that ambiguous. It's whoever you want to sleep with, whoever you want to be with, blah, blah, blah. But people really freak out if they're not like, if you're not going to follow this like path, if you're not going to stick to the rules that are set up by this sort of like, let's face it, like patriarchal society that we live in, they kind of freak out a little bit. And I think especially for bi women, the role of like women and their bodies is like a pretty cut and dry for some people, and they're like, well, you will end up with a man because that's certain, and I know, and I can see your life if you end up with a man. If you end up with a woman or someone who's not a guy, I can't see I can't see how that plays out. And so they sort of freak out. And I think, unfortunately, for these, especially bi women, and, there's a lot of other bi experiences out there as well, but I really think it freaks people out. I think they just get ooky spooky. And I also think it forces, when you are open about your sexuality and your gender, you are forcing you're not forcing them, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People feel like they're being forced to question their own choices in their own lives and their own sexuality.
Like holding up a mirror to somebody.
Exactly. And I wonder if that's what's coming through more. Again, I think it's just people are fixed, and even queer people, or even like people who think they're open and they're hetero, I don't think they realize how much their mind is fixed with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought up a good point before about the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Right on.
How long have you got? How long's a piece of string? So obviously we heard a lot from you about this sort of internalized like biphobia and lesphobia, and I think that's where we were trying to like figure out together. We were like, where is this all coming from? Why do people just always assume that you're, as a woman, you're going to default back to ending up with a man? Heather said, it's so internalized that I question the legitimacy of my own attraction to women, which to me, I was just like, oh my God, like what a burden. Like that is so fucked up that you know, like there's pressure of society and maybe people around you, family and friends, and like the internalized that you carry from birth. Like you're literally like, wait, am I into her or am I just, you know, like that must be so tough. We had another voice memo from Bailey talking about this.
I've been an out and proud lesbian since I was 15 or 16 years old. I'm in a happy and healthy relationship with a woman, and I've done so much work within myself to get myself to a point where I'm really happy and I'm really okay talking about it. However, in the past little while, I've noticed a little bit of an attraction to men starting to pop up, and it's really confusing me because I've done so much work to become comfortable with being a lesbian and not being attracted to men, and all of a sudden this has come up out of nowhere. And so have I been too scared to acknowledge that I have been bisexual all these years due to like internalized biphobia, or is it like a fear of other people's biphobia, or am I just a lesbian experiencing comp het? There's just so much to unpack and it's so confusing.
So is this something that you like can resonate with, or like maybe friends of yours have been like as well? Like
totally.
Yeah.
It's so funny, especially like with people exploring their gender identities as well. The idea of like putting a label on their sexuality becomes a little bit more confusing or weird. Like I will use the label lesbian, but then I'll use queer as well. But I totally get where Bailey's coming from, because I called myself bi until I was in a relationship, and then I was like, oh, okay, I feel like this is it for me. I don't think I can. I was like, I feel more settled in who I am, and this feels about right. And then similarly to Bailey, every so often, like someone will come up, and I'll be like, what the hell is going on? Like, but I think it's still just like you have to be kind to yourself. This is where I have an issue with people like Betty Who saying that there's an alphabet mafia and stuff like that. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's how you respond, like you sort of like putting up the barriers and being like, they're going to come get me because I changed my sexuality or blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But I totally get where Bailey's coming from, of being like, is it also this comp het situation as well?
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what comp het is, can you explain?
So it's a compulsory heterosexuality, and it is that idea which we kind of touched on earlier, that like we have been forced into these like gender roles and into heterosexuality and into the nuclear family to the point where we don't even know who we are.
Yeah.
Like, even a couple years in, I did start to realize that I don't know when I was like and not to get too TMI. Why do I care about TMI on this podcast?
Literally, I was like, no, this is the perfect place to be TMI.
But I think that like when I would have sex with men, I was thinking about how I looked and how it was for them. And like when I would go on dates, I was dressing for them and what they found attractive and stuff like that. Yep. Whereas I wasn't really sure about like when I felt good or what felt good for me to wear and stuff like that. And I think and that's an idea of like comp het, where you're like, I'm just performing for men because they still are the dominant force.
Yes.
And I still care about them, and I still send to them, and I still do it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you catch yourself constantly just being like, wait, why am I giving this guy so much grace and not this woman?
Yeah.
You know? And
even those little conversations where, you diminish yourself a little bit, or you say sorry a couple more times in the sentence, and you're like, what am I sorry for? Like those little things. Yeah, that's really fascinating to hear that. Like and thank you for sharing it as well. Like that's super helpful.
Welcome.
Like, thank you. But yeah, so it's really interesting, and a lot of you kind of resonated with that one. And, you know, like we had so many DMs of people being like, it was really damaging, you know, to your sense of self. Like you felt a bit lost, a bit confused. And another video like that kind of almost kicked off this whole topic as well was one from none other than Kath Ebbs, who is, I guess like a podcaster, a writer, a creative in the queer scene. And they actually did a kind of like a reaction to Betty Who. And it was a bit of a crash out video, which we love.
Love to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now. So this was something that they said about, I guess that feeling of, the internalized biphobia getting to you to the point where you question yourself and your own sexuality and your attraction.
Also reinforces this really ugly trope that lesbianism or queerness is a phase. This is something that I have contended with my whole journey of coming out. Not only when I was in the closet thinking that my feelings were frivolous, stupid, not real, but even as an out gay person, this kind of rhetoric makes me like panic. When it's like, no, you're just living under heteronormativities, which is thrown in your face, left, right, and center.
I think that's just like such a good, summary of like everything that you are feeling and people like messaging us as feeling as well. And I think, even though of course, like we said, like this is a highly publicized thing, like it's a podcast, it doesn't necessarily reflect real life, but you know, people speaking like this, it does have like real life consequences.
Absolutely. And you do see, I think what was Kath Ebbs, like that is also an interesting, like speaking of lesbians who end up with, the Jojo Siwa situation.
Literally, I've been waiting to chat about that, but yeah.
And it is just, I think like what I found so upsetting about that is, and look, I was watching those clips on Big Brother and I was like, oh my God. And I was messaging people like, I think Jojo's about to cheat on Kath, or at least emotionally cheat. And
you and I were in the DMs.
We were.
We spent like a lot of time being like, what is happening?
What is happening? But at no point was I my thing was, because I'm a rat, I was in there for the goss. I was like, oh my God, Jojo's gonna cheat, blah blah blah. It was more about that. But what I found shocking was reading the comments and people saying she's her true self with him.
Oh my God.
She's embracing her divine femininity. And I was like, no. I was like, this is just someone who's young and exploring their sexuality. And I understand the crash out of being like, fuck, no matter what we do, people are always going to be relieved when you end up with a man, or be like, this is where they're supposed to be, this is who they're supposed to end up with, or aren't they their true selves, or like, it's depressing.
That is really depressing, and it is so bruising to yourself and your identity. And no wonder, like, there are so many people out there who are really struggling with this, like women in particular, who are just trying to find their way through this like journey of sexuality and getting questioned left, right, and center. So I'm sure a lot of you listening and watching are probably shouting at your screen or yelling on the bus wherever you listen to this podcast, and you're being like, oh my God, like, why is it anyone's business? You literally don't have to date another person to know that you are gay or bi or whatever. And like so many of you agreed in our DMs, you know, Sonia saying you don't have to be dating a woman to know you're bi. So simple, mind your own business, accept people for who they are. Alex said, I think biphobic lesbians forget we were queer before ever having a woman-loving woman relationship too. But we got this DM and I'm actually really keen to show it to you and get your opinion on it. So Cassie said, I must say, and I do feel a little guilty about it, she says, I have a hard time understanding women that identify as bi, queer or pan who are single and are actively dating but not actively trying to date women. What do you reckon is going on?
It's really interesting. I think a lot of baby queers are in that boat where like I just said before, I was out to my friends as bi for a while, but I admittedly didn't have my dating profiles set to women. I think I did it once and nearly met up with a girl and then cancelled and freaked out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I think I also just felt like inexperienced and I didn't want to disappoint someone. But I was just I think I fell into that trap of being like, no, women are these like nymph-like creatures that are greater than, like, because I feel like we can easily put women on a pedestal, and rightly so.
But
like, I think it becomes this like trap where we actually, as a result, don't see women as humans. They're just other people. If you're dating, you're just dating other people. And I can understand the fear of it because it feels like you're adding women to your dating apps profile, adding interested in women. It does feel like opening up the gate and be like, oh, okay, I'm doing this now. And I think if you are feeling queer, you're feeling bi, do it. And if you go on a few dates and it doesn't work out, it doesn't necessarily negate the feelings that you're having. You might have just like not been interested in that person. It's just another person that you're going on a date with. But I can understand as well the point of view of being like, why wouldn't you want to date another person? Why wouldn't you want to date women? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first read this, I was like, I definitely know what they're talking about. And I feel like it's a really hard conversation to have because it's, like you said, it's like a lot of people who are scared to come out and make that leap. And like everything that we've said so far, like there are so many reasons for you not to do that because everybody's already like giving you flack and there's so much pushback and challenges already. I immediately actually thought of that joke that Caleb Heron said about like all the bisexual girls and their boyfriends. And I was like, and I understand why some people were like, shut up, Caleb. Like, I get it. Because I was like, that is like a lot of people were like, that's bisexual erasure. And I'm like, totally.
For sure.
You got to take most of what he says with a grain of salt. Like, he is a comedian after all. But like,
absolutely. But also you got to have a sense of humor about it. It is fun. And I do think that like it's, and there are legitimate bi people who have great boyfriends.
Yeah.
And
they are legitimately bisexual down to the bone, like whatever it is. But I did think that like I was trying to understand this and try to like take a step back and be like, okay, why is it that like women aren't actively dating even if they say that they are bi or interested in women in some capacity? And yeah, a lot of you actually came through and kind of explained it better than I could ever. Yeah, so we got this voice memo from Carly talking about it and like I think what she summed up so well is that it kind of just goes back to the internalized like patriarchy, like homophobia, biphobia, all of that.
The social construct of, heteronormativity has a big influence on that. And I think I've always just found it like the concept of just, dating men has in my mind seemed easier to do. And I have felt a level of like, definitely not taken as seriously. Myself as well, I've not taken it as seriously when it comes to like dating women. Like I've also questioned if a lot of it's been like my attraction to women has been because of, like the hypersexualization of women as well. And then I would try and picture myself like dating other women and I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I'm finding now that I probably see myself dating a woman more now than I would a man, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Carly brought up like some really good points, like a lot of the stuff that we've heard previously, but also what you were saying about like it being like just genuinely easier, right?
Yeah.
Genuinely on easy mode. And Catalina also DM'd us and said, it is just easier dating a man because no one has a weird reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of thinking like with everything that we've heard, with all the biphobia and the lesphobia and everything that's out there, like it's almost like why would you choose? If you just genuinely were like, I like both guys and girls.
Yeah.
It's almost like why would you choose the hard thing when life is already hard enough?
Yeah. Again, the awkward conversations that can come out of it. You don't know where people sit, where their comfortability is, and it is just easier. There was something interesting that came up in that voice memo as well that I think kind of plays into the bi women or queer women who don't actively date, or maybe even on dating apps don't have women interested. And I was thinking about my own experience and was like, I think I didn't know. I knew when I would swipe on Tinder back in the day.
Oh my God, Tinder. Oh, wow.
I could never forget. I would proudly boast that I had 100% success rate on Tinder with swiping because I was really careful about which guy I would swipe right on. I would like pick the men that I think would swipe right on me. Like it was still about if they would like me.
Yeah.
And I knew the kind of guy that I think would be interested in me. Whereas like when I added women, I didn't know. I was like, I actually don't really know where I sit in this. I don't know, like I can easily manic pixie dream girl myself in the straight world, but in this one I'm like, oh no, like where do I sit? Who am I attracted to? Because I don't know.
I find that really interesting. I want to play out this voice memo from Gemma talking about her experience.
I realised I was queer 7 years ago, but haven't dated a woman yet. I've gotten a lot of flack for it, with people telling me I'm pretending for attention or I'm just trying to be trendy. It's made my dating life more difficult because I get extra nervous to go on a date or to be intimate with femme people in case I don't end up having stronger feelings for them, even though I would never worry about that with men.
See, that to me,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, bam, okay, interesting. So you're already stressed about where the intimacy could go because you don't know if you can make that leap and actually like actively romantically date somebody. And I find that so interesting that people are feeling like that. And what she said was, she was like, I'd never worry about that with a man. And it's so true. You're literally like,
Yeah.
oh, well, the date didn't work out, or like, yeah, we dated for 3 months and it just wasn't right. But like there is this inane pressure for women who are dating other women, like already to follow through with it, or that people are already going to be like, oh, classic, you weren't interested in me, like in that way.
I think it comes back to this thing where people just don't think they're gay enough. That's the wrong thing to think about. I think if you question if you're straight, ask if you're straight, because the answer will be no. If you're like, you know what I mean? Like, especially with the voice memo we just heard, you know you're queer. Did you watch Stick It growing up? Did you watch Bring It On over and over again? You're gay.
What was the roller derby movie? Was that Stick It?
Oh my God,
no.
Whip It.
Whip
That's-
It.
That also.
Oh.
Yeah, if you watched Whip It, you might be a lesbian.
I watched that so many times. Dude. Babe Ruth, I was
Oh,
obsessed.
madam.
I did roller derby when I first moved to Melbourne, like almost 10 years ago.
And you sit here a straight person. This is unbelievable. I can't believe, Pip, you dress like this, you do roller derby, and you're going to have the audacity to tell me that you are a straight woman.
I know, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm such a piece of shit. I know. It's so fucked.
You actually have to come out as straight, which is...
You keep pressuring me to do this. You're the one that's like, you better come out by the end of this. You better. I know.
But yes, I think, yeah, I feel for you, for people who are unsure or feel like there's a lot of judgment, but I think you just have to, like, as lame as it sounds, be true to who you are, right? Like, I think I saw something because people talk about gaydars and stuff like that and how like that's kind of a problematic term to use or whatever, but I like saying gaydar, which again, come for me if you want to, but it's because somebody framed it as not like being able to tell if someone's gay, but noticing like a lack of straightness.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know,
yeah,
sensing
yeah.
queerness, noticing it's a lack of straightness that you notice, which is a compliment.
I think it's a great compliment.
I wonder if people were to use that on themselves to be like, wait, hang on. Like it's that classic therapy thing of being like, would you say this to somebody else? Then don't say it to yourself.
Oh yeah, I love that one. Well, it's interesting, like with the DMs and the voice memos that we got, like something that came up again and again, and we just heard it with Gemma, was the feeling the fact that people was saying you're doing this for attention.
Yeah.
It's trendy. I think Gemma used the word trendy. And I think that's kind of something that like is maybe worthwhile like talking about just briefly and exploring that, because I think for us in this cultural moment where we live, who we are as people, what we do, I think there is a bit of like cultural social capital to be queer or to be gay, to fit in some sort of like, spectrum of that kind of realm. And I think it's interesting because it sucks so bad that people are being told like, you're just doing this because it's trendy and cool to be gay. But there is sort of like a kind of coolness to it that, I mean, specifically for us, that, you might be listening to this in a regional part of Australia or a regional part in the world or somewhere where it is not cool at all. And it's like, it's dangerous. So like, I want to like acknowledge that very clearly. But like, for a lot of the time when you just go on any social media and see people like being like, oh yeah, like I love my queer fans, like pause up, like, vibe, like that kind of thing. Like there is a sense of cool and trend to it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy.
No, I think it is cool to be gay.
Yeah.
I think it is. But genuinely in my heart of heart, I think it's cool to be gay, and I'm not even saying that as like a societal thing. I'm like, if you look at the coolest pop stars out there, the like greatest artists, the stuff, and like especially from like queer POC like areas like ballroom and stuff like that, the slang that we use, all that, it all comes from mostly queer Black people where our sense of coolness kind of like derives from. So it's this weird thing where it's like it is cool to be gay, but it's not, people aren't doing it for social cachet, because there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling that you get to. There's like a point where you it's like, well, ultimately it's still like illegal to be gay in some cities, in some countries. It's still like, I don't but I know that it is used as a branding thing, especially for like young people and stuff like that. And that's where you get like the tricky stuff with people like Jojo Siwa and Betty Who and Fletcher as well, where they've branded themselves as queer for or even as like they're still queer, but they've branded themselves, I guess, specifically as lesbian or seeming as though they are lesbians. And that kind of, as a queer person myself, I love supporting the gays and things like that. I love putting my money into that thing. So it can be, that's where you get into this tricky scenario where when they start dating a man, again, depending on how they approach it, you're like, it's either chill or it's not chill. I mean, Kristen Stewart has dated men and we've all been like, she's a lesbian.
Yeah.
I mean, she's married to a woman now, but like.
Yeah. I agree with you. Like, I'm kind of like, why would, like, we've heard all this stuff about like how hard it is to be bi or gay as a woman. So it's almost like, why would somebody be like, like for fun and just to like do it for attention? Like, there's no way. And like, I was having a conversation with a friend over dinner like a couple of nights ago, and I know that they in the past had like hooked up with women, like never really seriously dated, but they were sort of dating now. And I was like, how's it going? Like on the apps, are you looking at both, like men and women? And she was like, nah, it's too hard with women, you know, like it's too hard. Like, if I like guys, I'm going to just do that. Like, and I think she was sort of like referring to like her family dynamic as well. Like, especially if you come from conservative or like a ethnic background where it's not accepted. So it's just like, it's in the too hard basket to do for people. So why in God's green earth would you literally be like, yeah, cool, I'm going to do this thing that is typically like, make moving through the world a little bit more difficult, let's just say. And, you know, something that you said earlier as well at the top of this episode, which we said we were going to get into, is that feeling of lesbians who don't want to feel like they're getting used in like a scenario in terms of dating. And like, obviously we've heard from quite a few people from in this episode being like, lesbians are telling me like I'm going to end up with a man, and like they get really threatened. We had so many like DMs from people like this. But I want to start off with Sam, who said, as a lesbian, I find it really hard to check myself for biphobia when I date bi women who then date men. I find it so hard to not feel like I was a little experimentation for them, especially when I'm the first girl that they've been with and dated long term. Again, we had like responses to this. Bianca, who's a bi-femme, saying, I've been invalidated when breaking up with a lesbian who just accused me of wanting a man. So Beck sent us this voice memo talking about sort of even on first dates, lesbians being like, nah, you're just going to end up with a dude.
So on first dates, particularly on queer dates, the topic of sexuality usually comes up. And on several dates I've been on with lesbians, after saying that I'm bisexual, which I've not hidden before this, it's listed on my dating profile. But I've had several women tell me that I wasn't really interested in women for a serious relationship, and that I'm just experimenting, and that one day I'll just go back to men. I've even been told that I'll probably just cheat eventually because I've got more options, or because I just want everything and can't make a choice. So basically I've been told that they don't want to pursue a relationship with me because I don't have a gender preference for a potential partner, which is pretty disheartening, and really it feels very demeaning and like I'm not trustworthy as well.
I really feel for her.
Yes,
but I also want to like totally validate that feeling of if you are a lesbian and you're literally feeling that anxiety that someone is going to just move on from you and move back to that like nuclear family, which is kind of what you were hinting at before. But like, I'd love to hear from you about like, what you think of that.
I think lesbians, you got to back yourselves more. You got a lot to offer. Okay. Like, just statistically, and not all men. Hey, but you are better at sex.
I was about to say the orgasm gap. Statistically, you're doing amazing.
You're doing a lot better. You are great at creating a home. You're great at making a suburb pop off. So just like, I think if you're dating a bi woman, remember that you have the upper hand in many cases, literally. So just, I think back yourself some more. I feel, I feel for bi girls who are going on dates, but I understand that feeling of being like, well, society is going to reward you for breaking up with me. Yeah. And there is always going to be this pull of like your family approval and stuff like that, which is going to pull people in other directions. But I will say this, Pip.
Yes.
I was just having a think during that voice memo.
Oh.
Of all the like gay marriages that I know, and especially with gay women, it's largely a lesbian married to a bi woman.
Oh, interesting.
So lock them down.
Yeah.
That's bi erasure, taking them out of the dating scene. Actually, that is not my joke. That is Alex Ward. That is Alex Ward. I just
Shout out Alex Ward.
I was like, why is that genius? Because it's Alex Ward's joke, not mine. Alex Ward, great lesbian, great comedian. But yeah, it is, it's pretty, it's sad. And I know a lot of people who've sort of gone through that. I think that there is a day... I would say if you have noticed a pattern of being a girl's first queer experience, if you're like, oh, I'm always somebody's first queer experience, I think take some time for yourself and try to not do that. And I think unpack why that's the case, because I think that you get yourself into some dangerous territory there and you're not giving yourself a chance as well. But I have, obviously, I think that happens more with younger queer people because that's just the pool that
I was going to say,
yeah.
if you're listening and you're like maybe under 20 or whenever you're becoming sexually active, like that is going to be the case.
Yeah.
But I think that's such a valid point. I really agree with that. This is like such a huge topic. And yeah, I think we've covered like so many different angles of this. I guess like to sort of conclude it in some sort of way, I think, you know, like power to all the people who are out there and living their best like bi lives, and like, you know, we hope that like I hope that you feel like validated from hearing all of these experiences and us trying to unpack together as like what is going on and why we feel some type of way about it. And like Jordan, like, yeah, just really, honestly, I really appreciate you being here and like lending like much like personal experience into this and your thoughts. Like it means so much. So I really appreciate it.
Sorry if I yapped like crazy, but
no,
I just found it's so interesting. And also just like, yeah, just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
I think, and be kind to others, but also don't say that it's illegal to be straight,
and don't say alphabet mafia. And maybe like if someone is bi and they date a man, like don't hold it against them. And if they also just end up dating women, that's also great. Let's all just enjoy sex, you know, and relationships.
Exactly. We're just begging everyone.
We're just begging everyone to fuck, please.
Oh,
all right. Well, thank you to everyone who sent us a voice memo. We love and appreciate you. And yeah, this has been such an interesting episode, like a very unique experience. But if you're a guy as well, if you're a gay guy or a bi guy and you have thoughts on this as well, like would love to hear, like maybe we can do like a companion episode about like some of the challenges that you face in terms of, your sexuality as well. So see you in the DMs, Illy. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.